2, 3.
Welcome to Paidaxiology, conversations on the value of children.
I am so pleased to introduce Abigail, who is happily married to Jerry for 25 years this June. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a huge achievement, and we could talk about that. And it says here that you have 14 children, so hopefully we'll talk about this as well. And
Yes.
that 4 of them are saints in heaven.
Yes.
It also says that you love gardening, crocheting, embroidery, knitting, hiking, playing board games, and relaxing with your family. So I've got questions about all of those things, most of which I'm very bad at, except hiking. I love to hike. So that's wonderful. And that you are the proud grandma of 2 sweet grandbabies so far, and that you homeschool the 6 school-age children. So I'm really excited. It sounds to me, just looking at your short bio, that that our children may be really similar in age. And so we can compare notes on that. But yeah, welcome to Paidaxiology, where we talk about the value of children. And mostly we just want to find out how you became the kind of person who would want to have 14 children, which of course is a big mystery for a lot of people. Who would want to do this ever and why? And so obviously the first step is we would demystify this wildlife that you have for lots of other people, help to make it understandable. And then we can just go back and forth about the things we love about having children and anywhere we want to go after that. One of the first questions I always like to ask my guests is, did you always know that you wanted children? Or did you know when you got married that you wanted to have children? And so that's my question for you.
All right. Yes, I always knew that I wanted to have children. I am the middle of 3, and I think all I really knew was I did not want to have a middle child.
Ah.
So I wanted to have an even number, very intentionally. When my husband and I first met and started dating, maybe even before we started dating, we discussed, do you want kids? Because I think for both of us, that would be a deal breaker, right? I didn't have any real interest in being in a relationship with someone who never wanted to have kids. It's not my job to convince you to want to have children, you to have that desire. And he did, and we both were like, how many? And interestingly enough, we both responded at the same time, 6.
Okay.
So from that aspect, like, we definitely knew going into this, we wanted more than what would be considered traditional, right? 2 to 3 kiddos. This is actually less than that now in the normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, we, I guess, just overshot our goal a little bit.
That's great. I want to ask you to tell us how you went from 1 to 14. If you can even remember it. Sometimes people ask me, wow, you have 8 children. And I say, it's becoming a bit of a haze. I look back and wonder, when did all that happen? But before that, how did you meet Jerry and what was that like?
Yeah, so we met at college. In my freshman year, I had to get a job for work study. And I thought, well, I'll work in food service. That can't be that hard. Like, everybody needs to eat. And then my brother was a year ahead of me in college. So he was already working in food service. He's like, it's great. You get free meals, right? It's lovely. And he gave me an additional piece of advice, which was, don't apply at your dorm. Go across the street and apply at the all men's dorm, which seemed wise, right? Oh, yeah, I'll go work where there's just a bunch of guys. That's perfect. But the real reason was they only serve lunch and dinner Monday through Friday. So I would never have to work a breakfast or a weekend. So
My goodness.
the job got even better. So I did apply. And I actually got a call back telling me I needed to come in for an interview, which I hadn't expected. My brother said, as long as you're alive and breathing, they'll hire you. And so I was like, an interview? Okay. What it was, they only interviewed the females who applied. So it was a preview of who are we bringing in. And the young man who called me for my interview is actually Jerry, my husband now.
Oh,
So
okay.
he
That's
said
great.
from that first phone call, he thought I sounded cute on the phone.
Wow.
So
That's a great one. Yeah. How does that occur?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but he was actually at my job. He was one of my bosses.
Okay.
I guess that would have been August, and we started dating then in January. So,
And where were you in school, if you didn't mind sharing? Where was
yeah, we were at Purdue
kind of
University in
At
Indiana.
Purdue? Okay, that's great. Yeah. such a variety of kinds of schools. And that's a great example. It's not a school that I think it's not like a traditional conservative college that would be known for producing lots of marriages. These things have changed over time. But yeah, today it's dating in college and even getting married near college. That's when my next question is, when did you get married? But yeah, what we're seeing is people are standing on their heads to get college students to date each other. So how about that? That's how you met, and then
Yeah, we started dating in January of my freshman year. It was his junior year.
okay,
And then after he graduated a year and a half later, we got married that summer.
okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So you are still in college.
I was still in college.
Okay, that is
yes.
the big that is the big one. It's a special group of people and something that I think would be great to normalize, but it's very uncommon.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So you were in college, and how did that go? Your parents were okay with that? His parents were okay with that?
Yeah. So I think his parents were happy that he was getting married. He was at that point in time the oldest of 5 children.
Okay.
His mom, post our getting married, actually has had 2 more. So now he is the oldest of 7.
Okay.
But yeah, so they were excited he was getting married. My parents, unfortunately, my senior year in high school, my parents got divorced.
Mm.
And neither was super checked into what was happening in the lives of their kids at that point. Like
Ah.
they were dealing with their own traumas and their own
Yeah.
difficulties in life.
Yeah. I'm sorry. My parents are also divorced, so I think I know what that's like. You couldn't have said it better. They just were checked out of your life at that time. So, in other words, they didn't show up to oppose you getting married in the middle of college.
So there was opposition, but it
Was.
wasn't the fact that I was getting married. It was the fact that I was joining the Catholic Church,
Ooh.
which interestingly enough was, I don't want to say wholly separate, because I can see that in God's plan, like obviously he knew how all these pieces would play together.
Okay.
But I had started asking questions about the history of the church. So I grew up Protestant, not any specific consistent denomination. We were Baptist for a while. We were Presbyterian when we lived in the town, where my grandpa was a Presbyterian minister. I have an uncle who's a Nazarene minister. My other grandfather is a Methodist minister. So it was highly variant upon where we were living at the time. And we moved like 13 times before I was in the 8th grade. So
Wow.
we switched it up a lot, but we were always at church. Like God was never not a part of my story.
Mhm.
But early in high school, I had started digging into what's the history of our faith. Obviously, I know it started with Jesus, but what does it look like over the course of time? And I had this desire to have more depth, more richness that I wasn't finding in the churches we were at. And so I started finding the doctors of the church and reading their writings. And in their writings, I could feel and sense that richness of tradition, that depth of faith that had been removed, right? And it was missing it was missing. So I had started looking into the Catholic Church, not with the intent of ever joining it,
Right.
with the intent of wanting to witness to the Catholics and bring that richness to what I had, right? I was happy
Yeah.
where I was, to bring that into where I was.
Yeah.
God's plans were different than that. And I did actually end up going through the RCIA program there and joining the Catholic Church. So if my parents were upset and vocal about something, it was that.
Okay.
And then the
Interesting.
fact that I was marrying a Catholic was just on the frustration cake for them,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So
Wow, that's so interesting. What an interesting story. And so Jerry was Catholic already and
yes.
pretty happy in his faith, or settled at that point, or
He was happy being Catholic. He wasn't super active in his
I
faith
think every
at the
college guy
time.
ever.
I think like most college kids,
Yeah.
sadly,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Aside from the ones who are at good Catholic universities, right, where the
Right.
faith is more active in living, it's not what what the other kids are doing, right?
Right.
There's so many opportunities to do so many other things. Church is just not top priority, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I was actually heavily involved with, it was called Campus Crusade for Christ at the time. It's now called Crew.
Sure.
And I was
Yeah.
actually leading a Bible study for them as a
Okay.
freshman.
Mm.
So I was working the angle of, I would definitely never date a Catholic,
Mhm.
but I could get him
Yeah.
to join my church. Then
Yeah.
it's all good. Then we're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And so he was coming with me to church.
Mhm.
Now we laugh about it. And I'm like, what were you thinking? You should never have done that. Again, I think we were both on a journey and God was working on both of our hearts. In the end, what came out of it is he and I both are much more polished in our apologetics now to defend the faith, understand it, and to have a deeper relationship with Christ, and then to share that with our children so that they too, they understand the whys. Why are we Catholic? We've from the earliest days encouraged them that they need to have a relationship with Jesus. That mom and dad's relationships with Jesus
Yeah.
are not what's going to get them to heaven. That they need to actively live out the faith. And it's been really incredible just to see the faith for each of them come alive and how big of a role it plays in their lives.
Yeah. That's really great. Now, a question I have is thinking about where you are, your conversion in the middle of college is really interesting. Why did you decide to get married when you got married? This is always an interesting question to me. People's, obviously, that you both said 6 children is already, you were different, you were unusual people. But yeah, what was behind the let's get married now? Which even when you got married, this was a different time, but even when you got married was pretty uncommon.
Oh, for sure, right? I was 20, he was 21. You know,
Yeah.
by standards, anything past like the 1900s, we were young.
Yep.
Right? I think we knew, I want to marry you. Why wait? Like in our minds, we couldn't come up with a reason why to hold off on doing that. And fast forward to now, like we've seen that play out with our 2 children that are married. Like they met the one, they knew it was the one, they dated for some time. They got engaged, and our oldest daughter, when she got engaged initially, I think initially they were going to get married in September, which was roughly a year and a half post their engagement. And my husband and I were both like, that's great. That's lovely. Why then? They were like,
Yeah.
well, because the flowers will be blooming in Wisconsin. That's a reason, sure. But why wait? Right? The church says you need a 6-month engagement.
Yeah.
That gets you through your preparation, right? It gives you some more time to get to know the person because you do get to know someone differently once you're engaged than when you're dating, right? Now we're having harder conversations
Yeah.
about the feasibility of doing life together. And they actually ended up getting married in May because they discussed it and were like, yeah, like why are, and I think a lot of it played into it for them. I can remember back for us. It's that physical attraction side.
Yep.
There are things you're ready to do. You want to get married so you don't have to keep waiting, right?
Yeah. No, so I was curious if you were going to mention that because this is a really big thing. And I started looking for it more in my formal interviews for my research for the next book. Because one of the things that's come into this conversation broadly about why people aren't having children is, let's put it this way. So people have said, all right, looks pretty hard to talk people into having kids, right? Meaning countries have been trying this. So there's people will dispute me like, okay, we got a little bit here, we got a little bit there. But overall, it's pretty tough to talk people into having kids. And so the conversation has shifted in the public, among public intellectuals to maybe we can't talk people into having kids, but maybe we can get them to get married. And the reason being, if you can move the age of marriage back from 30 to 25 or 25 to 21, you know, what that does is at least the people who at least, you know, want 1 or 2 children or even 3, they have time to hit their goal. So you aren't necessarily raising the desire for children, but you're facilitating the transition to the time in which you could be accepting children. Okay. So that seems really interesting. And so everyone's talking about what will get people to get married. I'm here to tell you, it turns out to be fairly difficult to get people to get married. And we don't have many decades of data on this, but I've so far been the quiet voice in the room that says, well, actually, nature put an incentive in place. Nature's God put an incentive in place And that incentive is holy and good and extremely powerful. But if we remove that incentive, which is like, we'd really like to couple up, we remove that incentive and then we say, gee, can we pay people to get married? It turns out none of those things seem to work as well. And so just to affirm your story, which I think is so interesting, and it certainly applies to me and my marriage and the ones that I've seen so far, my close circle, like my 2 sons who are married, but this plays a huge role. Think about how do you revive marriage without reviving a culture of, we could say, chastity, of
Right.
waiting for marriage. And this like almost sounds very old fashioned. But now we have to confront pornography. We have to confront the normalization of sex before marriage, which of course is generally facilitated by various types of birth control. And so at this point, most people will throw up their hands and say, we can't do that. That's just too big.
Well,
Okay.
because it seems insurmountable
Yeah.
when you look at all the different facets that are playing against marriage, like
Right.
a traditional marriage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think on the one hand, there are standard secularized intellectuals who just don't believe anyone could live that way. And then I
I
think
mean,
the
and it's hard,
it is hard.
right? It's incredibly hard.
It
You
is
can't
hard.
sell it as this happy dance where you just float into
No.
the sunset, right? It's
That's
not
right.
that.
That's right. But I think in terms of this chastity piece, I like to say that it's a lot easier to sell waiting for marriage if marriage can happen when you're 21 than if you're selling
Right.
chastity, but you shouldn't. The normal time to get married isn't until you're 30. That's a crazy proposition because nature will out in a sense.
Right.
So,
Because we're humans. We have
Yeah.
human amounts of self-control.
yeah. So I'm creeping towards the conclusion that those of us that are working on this question of why people aren't having children and aren't getting married, we need to spend more time talking about what does seem to work. So
Right.
it's a great part of your story. And I'm finding I'm interviewing men and dads now. And I'm not gonna spill the beans on some of those great interviews until it comes out in this book. However, I am finding that this is playing a really interesting role in those interviews as well. So,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to make that make sense to people, or at least find a way to try to make that make sense to people. Because again, we're like living in a world like that's totally gone, where the expectation is some level of sexual activity from a really early age, certainly sexual exposure to all kinds of content, and people just can't
Right.
even picture. It's not even in the imagination for a lot of folks that it's possible to do it differently. So,
It is.
yeah, it is.
Right.
Again, like you said, it's
Right.
hard. It's not necessarily all going to be super easy to do, but hard things are worth doing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, you get married, and then tell me about your first baby.
So we got married and we actually moved from where we were. So he is from Wisconsin. I grew up in Indiana, which is where Purdue is. So we got married in Wisconsin near his family at his home parish, and then moved to Austin, Texas. I actually lived in a small town just outside of Austin for 11 years and then in Austin
Okay.
for 8 years. But yeah, so we moved across the country. We knew nobody but each other. I mean, and honestly, like, that is a way to start a marriage. There's nobody, we watched friends get married. They'd have a fight because you have fights. Like, it's
Yeah.
part of being human and
Yeah.
learning to be married. And they would go home to see their parents. They lived nearby, both sets of parents, right? He'd go home to his, she'd go home to hers.
Yeah.
And it never ended well. We moved ourselves across the country. We'd have a fight. We had nowhere to go. We had to learn to reconcile faster because it was just us. We didn't have any friends even at that point, and we just had to figure out how to make it work. So
Yeah.
in doing that, like, our relationship, it felt like just gauging from where peers were. That summer, I think we had 6 or 7 different friend couples who also got married. They were all across the country, but still had phones and the ability
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
communicate. So our relationship, it started to build a more solid foundation a little faster,
Mhm.
just because we didn't have options. We had
Yeah.
to. Necessity, the mother of invention, all that.
Yeah.
And then we realized, well, we want kids and
Mhm.
we want to have family with us. Let's have a baby,
Mhm.
right?
If
Like,
only you
what are
could
we
make your
waiting
own family.
for? Right? Let's start this. And so we got pregnant about 3 months after we got married, right? And that there wasn't really like a long window of trying. Let's have a baby. Hey, guess what? We're pregnant.
Yeah.
9 months later, we were able to name her, right? So yeah, like right out the gate, she was born 3 days after our 1-year anniversary.
Wow. That's great.
So it was awesome, right?
Mhm.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was really incredible. We started our family. And
Yeah.
obviously by that time, we had started getting to know our neighbors and other
Yeah.
people in our neighborhood, and some of his coworkers from his job. So it wasn't that we were completely alone anymore, but now we had, family with us.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's a great image. Now, what kind of work was your husband doing?
So he's an electrical engineer. Well, he still
Mhm.
does to this day.
Okay.
I know it's unusual, right? Somebody like at the same job for
Yeah.
coming up to 25 years now.
Yeah.
But he really loves it. He's had a lot of great opportunities there. Initially, he helped design the microprocessors, and
Okay.
now he works more with the clients and helping to integrate those into their boards and such.
Okay. All right. So I guess my next set of questions is, okay, you are in Austin, you make your own family, you have your first baby, she's a girl. It might take a while, or maybe it's a quicker story, but like, how do you go from kind of wanting 6 or thinking 6 is a good number to sort of like, oh gosh, like we've blown past 6? Yeah. So I don't know, anything that you think is interesting in there,
Sure, yeah.
how you think about like when the next one should come, things like that. These are really interesting questions for people.
Yeah, so I know a lot of women have some amount of natural spacing. A whole other story, I am not able to nurse, so there
Mm.
is no spacing,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
There's no natural window where my
Yeah.
fertility is kind of on pause, let's say.
Yeah.
And so in the next 9 months or so after the birth of our first, we actually had 2 more pregnancies. The second one was actually a set of twins. And we lost all 3 of those babies. And that was where we started figuring out that although my first pregnancy had gone relatively okay, I actually have a lot of underlying health problems, issues, let's say,
I'm sorry.
struggles
Yeah.
that would vary in degree and presentation throughout the rest of my pregnancies. One of them being low progesterone. Low progesterone is not conducive to maintaining a pregnancy.
Yeah, carrying.
Right. So we figured that out. But in the meantime, with 2 back-to-back miscarriages, that's a hard thing to experience. It's a hard thing to go through. Again, I know that there was a lot of extra grace there from God that carried us through that grew our relationship with one another even deeper. Because again, the only family we had is this tiny baby
Yeah.
who isn't able to offer a lot in the ways of wisdom or support, unconditional love. And so after the second one, I guess after the first one, we started discussing it and then more seriously looked into it after our second miscarriage was the possibility of adoption, right? We knew we wanted a large family.
Yeah.
This may be the only baby we have. Like, what other avenues are out there? And both of our hearts had the pull to adoption. And we actually looked into what we did. We pursued adopting an older child. The only rationale that either of us can still to this day give for it is because we're actually crazy. Not because we knew what we were doing or had some master plan. Just we had seen the ads for these older children that needed homes. And we did. We actually went to the classes. And 2 weeks after we found out we were expecting what would actually be our second full-term baby, our only son, we had a 9-year-old placed in our home.
Okay.
We learned a lot, but what we did learn was in that time, the state of Texas didn't have the best set of practices in place for adoption. They were placing children into families out of birth order, which now we know is a really bad practice.
Okay.
And they were placing kiddos who were experiencing significant to severe trauma and had significant to severe attachment disorders. Unfortunately, the young lady who was placed with us was bipolar, and she did have what's called RAD, reactive attachment disorder. Long story short there, she ended up being with our family for right at about 4 years. And we had to relinquish our parental rights so that she could go back into the custody of the state to receive the level and type of care she needed, because that reactive attachment disorder makes it nearly difficult and not impossible for children to really succeed within a nuclear family, because specifically for her, because of what her trauma was and what her past had been. Each time we would try to bond and get closer to her, her internal fight or flight response was to hurt us before we could hurt her. So at the point where it turned to physical violence against me, physical violence against the younger kids and my husband, we had to take a real step back and say, okay, we have to keep. At that point, we had another daughter as well. So we have 4 kids, our now 13-year-old, and 3 young kids. And we said, it is on us to keep them all safe and alive. One is threatening the lives of the others. So we did a lot of praying, hired a lawyer, right? Like it was a mess. It was awful. But we ended up like, God came through and allowed us just to voluntarily relinquish our parental rights rather than anything worse happening. So, you know, that all happened. That was all finalized actually 2 weeks after we had our next child. So we went from being no kiddos, 1 kiddo, to then made it up to 5. And then 2 weeks later, dropped back down to 4. Then actually had what is now our 5th, all under 6 years.
That's amazing. That is crazy.
It was a crazy 6 years.
I'm really sorry about that. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You don't try for 4 years without really wanting to succeed. And
yeah, sure.
Must have been a lot of tears.
There was a lot of trauma, like for myself, for my husband, for our young kiddos to live in that environment. We have seen God redeem that and in a way that we would have never seen possible, but I won't spoil that part yet.
Okay. That's fine.
So again, 5 kiddos, 6 and under. Then because life is never dull, we experienced infertility for the first time.
Okay.
So at that point, we're like, well, I mean, we're having babies again. So we want 6. We made it to 5. Like, let's have another baby.
Yeah.
3 years. Like, of nothing.
Wow. Yeah.
And seeing my doctor who was like with all the struggles we've had, because I had the same OBGYN through everybody.
Okay.
She was like, you just may be done.
Okay.
Like, I can't really give you like amazing answers. Just 5 is a nice number. And we were like, yeah, I guess so. You know, obviously with time, we kind of, you know, began to come to peace with that. And I think it was at the point that we had finally accepted, I mean, this is nice. They're pretty great. Like, we love them. It's awesome. Gave away the last of the baby things.
Yeah, I've heard that story before. God has a sense of humor.
3 weeks later, we were expecting. And then over the course of the next 5 years, we had 5 more pregnancies. One of those, unfortunately, was a miscarriage. So we had 4 more babies in the next 5 years. And we made it to 9. And my husband, with all of my health struggles and with everything I had faced, and my doctor just saying, hey, like, we had to do a lot of interventions, and it was a lot of work on the parts of a lot of people, like, to keep me alive through the last pregnancy and for the baby to be okay. And that's scary, right? To have somebody tell you, like, you've got some organs that are trying to fail. Hey, I'm not going to tell you can't have more babies because you're an adult. And she knew that I was completely unwilling to use birth control because of many of the side effects of it. And so she's like, I don't have an answer, but I'm going to say, if you're pregnant, I'll see you as a patient. We'll repeat this, but I don't think you'll survive it. And it was a very frank conversation. And my husband and I were in we're just a lot of abstaining. Just pray about it. Come on, God, like, you've got to give us some direction, some answers. And when our youngest was 8.5 months old, I got a message on Facebook Messenger now this is 16 years later, the young
Okay.
lady that we had relinquished our rights to.
Oh my.
She had a 2.5-year-old who we had been aware of. But with bipolar, with everything else, we'd hear from her once every 3 years or something.
Hmm.
Usually it was something very angry, like we had ruined her life type thing.
Okay.
But this time it was different. It was, she's 2.5 now. She's not safe. She is not well cared for. She's not thriving. I think she had a day of clarity that she didn't have very often. Just, you can imagine, she wasn't living a good life, a healthy life for her or for this child now.
Yeah.
And she said, I want you guys to adopt her. And an hour later, she dropped her off. Just dropped her on the front porch. Her, a car seat, and a black trash bag with a couple of things in it.
Right.
And she walked away, and that was it. She was done.
Mm.
She relinquished her rights legally 2 days later. So, like I said, God redeemed it, right?
Yeah.
To now know we had her in our lives for 4 years, not for her own benefit, but because God knew her daughter, now our daughter, was going to need a family. Right? So that was, for us, that healed a lot of pain that was still just there.
Yeah.
I will say, obviously with 9 kiddos, I cannot say they were all like, hey, let's try to get pregnant and have a baby, There were a couple that was like, hey, guess what? So there were surprises, right? And an unplanned pregnancy, there's stress around that, right? There's a lot of unknowns. You may not have been mentally, whatever, ready for that. And there's difficulties that come with it. But you get 9 months to get ready.
Yeah.
An unplanned adoption, we had an hour.
Yeah.
Like, we were not ready for that.
Yeah. Amazing.
But it forced the whole family. Like, we sat down and had a conversation as a whole family. Obviously, the 8.5-month-old didn't really have a lot of opinions that we understood. But everybody else was like, if God's dropping babies on the front porch, you can't tell them no.
No.
My son had the funniest response. Again, we only have one son. And he goes, God's dropping off babies, and it couldn't even have been a boy. Sorry, bud.
Oh my goodness. All right. So he was your fifth?
Our son is our second.
Your second.
So he's number
okay.
2.
I got that wrong. Okay. All right. Amazing. So he was older, one of your older children, and then this baby comes along. It's not a boy. That's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, what I told him, right or wrong or whatever it is, he got a good giggle out of it. I said, look, bud, God got it right the first time with you. He chuckled. His sister, some of the older ones, were like, hey, now, what does that mean about us? I was like, it doesn't mean anything.
Mm.
It just means we have one really amazing son. And God knew that I do much better as a girl mom.
It's terrific. And so this baby 2.5 is a girl. And help me with the timeline. Like, how old are your youngest children now?
So our youngest, who was 8 months old then, is 8 years old now. So our daughter, who we adopted, is 9.
Okay.
And then our oldest is 23. So we
Okay.
have 23 to 8. So we had everybody inside of 16 years. Our first, our 9 biological inside of 15.
Yeah.
But then our oldest was 16 when our adopted daughter came to live with us.
Okay. This is an amazing story. Obviously, it's like a lot to think about there. But goodness, God bless you for having a heart to welcome these girls, both of them, different parts of your life. It's I have a pet dream that at some point Christian communities in this country can band together to help reduce the burden of children left in foster care. Because you think, are we a Christian nation? Like, why are there children looking for homes? And I think I have some idea of the difficulties there. I mean, you've just outlined some of them, but are we even trying? Like, we might fail, but it's worth failing at, right? It's worth failing at.
Yeah.
So that's a very beautiful story.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
And I can see how that would be healing in a lot of ways. But okay, so your grandbabies are little?
So my grandbabies are 5 months old and 12 months old. I guess he's 13 months now. But yeah,
Okay.
they're both
Okay.
little.
Both from your daughter who got married, or do you have two that are married?
So 2 that are married, our oldest
Okay.
2, our daughter and our son. So my granddaughter, the 5-month-old, is from my son, and then our
Okay.
grandson is from my daughter and her husband.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, our children are pretty similarly aged. My youngest is 9,
Okay.
and my eldest is 25. So he got married after the third son got married first. He was 19. And then the eldest got married last year, so now it'll be 2 years ago, late 2024.
Okay.
So there are 2 babies for the son who got married first, and
Oh,
the third is going to be born really any day now. I'm on call. I'm very excited.
congratulations. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm on call. So hopefully, if the stars align, I'll just get in the car. They're about 4 hours away and help them as much as they need for a little while.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm loving the transition to having grandbabies. I would say my youngest children are still hoping for a few more to come into our home, but I'm looking at them like, guys, it's been a decade. It seems like the message here is no more. But that's
It's a different kind of more. It's the grandbaby more.
yeah, it is.
Which is amazing.
It is. And then
I
you
still
see
get to
that,
sleep at night.
yes, and that your sons or your daughters who are married, they do still need you to mother them, but in new ways. And that's been really neat to see or to figure out. I'm still figuring it out.
To figure out that transition where like you said, they very much need you. And it's not in the same capacity that it is to be mom to little guys.
Yeah, that's right. That's lovely. Great. I don't know if I missed anything. We've gone from 1 to the end to 14. And at some point you moved from Austin to where you are now.
So we actually did that during COVID. When kind of the whole world went a little crazy. I found out that year was really able to dig into some more. Like I said, I've got a lot of health struggles, but was able to get official diagnoses for some of them. And the treatment for one of them in particular, unfortunately, I got the side effect of its treatment is a heat I can't handle the heat.
Okay.
I'm very sensitive to the heat. Intolerance, that's the word.
Okay.
And obviously living in Austin, Texas, it's hot. A lot of the things I like doing are outside. And I would begin to get the symptoms of heat stroke about 3 minutes in to temperatures 90 and above. Which, doesn't really work. Like with kids that want to play outside or want to go swim or want to take a hike. I couldn't do any of those things. I had to stay in the house all the time.
Oh, okay.
When we found that out, we had no potential outlook on the horizon of moving away from Texas. My husband's job is in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Then COVID hit. He found out he could work from home. Why does home need to be 3 miles from the office? Why can't home be somewhere cooler from the office? It did take the generosity of his manager to allow for us to actually move to somewhere that much further away, to allow him to be much more consistently remote than whatever short-term window that COVID was going to present. But again, God sets those paths and sets it all up. And we found a home here in Door County in Wisconsin that has 8 bedrooms. It's a lot more house than we thought we would ever have. But the timing worked out. Everything came together. And now we have a home where I think for the first time, we're willing to say this could be a forever home. All of our kids could get married and come back with spouses and grandbabies and still have somewhere to sleep.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible.
I remember a day a couple years ago, maybe it was just a year ago. My husband and I walk a lot, and I don't know. He was looking at a smaller house in our neighborhood, and he said, "We're pretty close. Like in another few years, we could downsize." I looked at him like, "Do you downsize? We're not going to downsize. I want bedrooms for all the babies to come back." I think he just shook his head and he realized it was not like this vision of we'll have a smaller house and a smaller carrying cost was probably not going to happen. But yeah, my image of the future of this big house is to put a lot of grandbabies in it. I mean,
Right.
just when they're visiting, of course, but if they want to stay
Right.
over for a little longer, that would be great too.
Come on up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's lovely. All right, basically what I've built my kind of interesting questions around generally it's just the things that people want to know. And I think I was going to say share what you want or move on. Um, but I would say two big things that I think for especially for women listening and for young people thinking about what kind of life they're imagining. I think there's two things that maybe you could take your pick, you could comment on. One, and especially because you do have so many children, I think there's a kind of sense of potential loss. I think people don't have a clear sense of how you could be you anymore with all of those kids. It's kind of like, oh, like, where would I be? So there is this kind of, and part of this is because larger families are so rare these days. And part of it is because there is this habit, we say cultural habit or contemporary narrative that what it means to grow up as a woman, a young woman in America is to decide from a young age, what are you going to do or be? But like professional mom isn't the picture. And so there is that sense that you need to cut, like your identity gets shaped really early, especially in your kind of like educational path and your career. We're seeing that girls, young women are persisting in college at this point and existing in college at higher percentages than young men. And a large part of that is like girls really like to think about their identity and cultivate craft like their CV and their narrative and like who they are. And I'm not saying any of that is bad, but I think it's hard for someone to imagine just if they met you on the street, I'm sure you get the comment, like, what does that even mean to be a person, to be an individual who you have your likes and your dislikes and your hobbies and your main relationship with your husband. And then you're just surrounded by all these people. It's like a town. It's a small village of people.
I
So how
call
do
it
you
the
think
tiny
about that?
army we created.
Yes, 100%. It's a tiny army. And I think the related question, and you can just decide which way you want to go here, is what does a marriage look like when you have so many? Does it,
Sure.
does it like suffer? Is it like, what's going on? So either one, how do you feel about, and how, or is that's changed over time or whatever? Yeah.
Right. So for me, for the first one, and this kind of goes back to I am a fan of getting married young. Like I said,
Yeah.
our two kiddos that are married did get married young, but we didn't have a lot of time as autonomous adults to really get set in our ways, is I guess how I've always phrased it. We were still very moldable as far as neither of us had lived on our own. Obviously, we came from college and got married. So we had always had someone we were living with, whether that was a sibling at home or a family or a roommate in college. So we hadn't been on our own to develop, well, I like these things done in this very specific way. Now, not to say we don't have preferences. I think my husband and I both are pretty OCD, which I know a lot of people are like, with that many kids, like, how can you be particular? And I'm like, that many kids doesn't stop me from wanting things done in a very specific way. I just train the kids to do it that way. And they know, right? Mom will make us do it again if it's not done like the way, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
So by getting married young, we weren't really set in particular habits. We weren't really set as, individuals. So we learned to adult together as a team. And as far as a sense of self, does having kids change you? There's no way you can say it doesn't. Obviously it does, right? You have this tiny human who is dependent upon you for absolutely everything. I think if you try to prevent it from changing you, right, somebody's losing there, right? And unfortunately, in that case, often that does mean the child is missing out on attentive parents. But I guess for me, I know the inner workings of me. I'm very familiar with how many selfish tendencies I have. And kids have an amazing way of smoothing out those kind of rough edges. Kids have absolutely, my children and their friends, I guess, too, because friends show up, right? But specifically our children have helped me become much closer to the best version of myself, because even on days where I would rather just be that selfish person and I don't want to get up and I don't want to have young adults getting ready for their jobs in the kitchen and they can't find their keys and they're frustrated because their keys are missing and someone must have taken them. And you're like, no, sweetheart. They're wherever you put them. I would rather be in a kitchen that's totally quiet. I would rather have that time to pray or just reflect or listen to my choice of music. Absolutely. Right. But by the grace of God, I don't get to do that. I get to share that space with these other unique, unrepeatable souls. And I get to help mold their life while they are simultaneously molding mine. Because each one of my kids, obviously, they are a fair share, my husband and myself, right? We each see qualities of ourselves in them. But they also each will have a quality that maybe is one you don't love about yourself. Right? And when you see another person behave like that, you're like, I really don't like that. I do that. I have to fix it. So they indirectly call us out. Yeah. So I am grateful that I'm not who I was. But at the same time, I don't think that, I mean, in the view of the world, right? Like, obviously, I've lost myself. I'm not the same self that I was before I got married.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a better person. I have gained so much more empathy for people dealing with situations that, aside from these kiddos, I would have never gone through. And 10 kids, they're all amazing, but they each have their own personality, right? No two of them are alike. And just when you think you've figured out like parenting and we got a good routine now, joke's on you, right?
Yeah.
But it's not going to work for the next one. And what works one year with one, like this suddenly will stop working. And you have to rethink what you're doing, rethink yourself. And again, I think that constant movement, that constant change does allow for me to improve as a person and for me to grow.
This is an interesting piece about having children. It's not obvious to me, or I guess I would say so far I haven't discovered it, that somebody would have a bunch of kids in order to grow. You're like, why'd you have your kids? I wanted to get better. But it's a very commonly reported unintended benefit. So it's something we're focusing on, is these unintended benefits, ways that children bless us that were not part of the original equation. We weren't like, this is why I had these kids. Because what we hear a lot about is the unintended negatives. Like we hear, oh, you haven't probably figured it out. They're going to cost you an arm and a leg and whatever. Or you won't be able to take vacations anymore, and keep going. There's a lot of this kind of thing. So I think that's one of the things we're really interested in exploring here. And this, if they make me better, is becoming, it's a really common theme. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. And the sort of the larger motif here, which is worth spelling out, is that I think we have become used to the idea that what we do is we exist to bring children into the world, say, and then, as you said about your young life as a young wife, like we have these children and it's our job to keep them alive and healthy and well. And in that sense, we think of ourselves as the authors of the children and also as the protectors of the children and the guardians of the children. And we are that. I'm not challenging any of that. But what's really interesting is this mysterious way in which actually the children end up like doing for us things that we couldn't do for ourselves. And so it's like they turn the tables. We think we're doing all of this for them, but actually without them, where would we be? And maybe in a time when you don't have to encourage childbearing, you don't have to make all this explicit. Because it's a little crass. There's a sense in which it's like, your children are just your children. They're ineffably, perfectly mysterious and interesting and valuable, even if they didn't ever make you better or they didn't ever bring you any blessing. And yet, I think it's like this is an age where we really want to lean into that question. What are the ways in which children actually enrich us? So I think that's It's really interesting. And you're
Right.
right, though. Like, I think everything you said about yourself is like squares with my experience, changes over time.
Yeah, and part of me feels like you mentioned, hey, this would not be the conversation if having more children were still a cultural norm. But I think it's beneficial to discuss it because I think as a culture, as a society, like we've forgotten that collective knowledge. Like we've forgotten that wisdom that didn't have to be spoken, that was passed on by living, by growing up in a big family, by participating and helping in that big family, and that being the normal. We've forgotten that knowledge and wisdom that would have otherwise just been quietly passed on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's, yeah, and I would say we're just beginning in these conversations, but so many biblical references that are, I think, salient here, but bringing into the open what has been hidden is one that I think about a lot. And I think, especially as Catholics, I can say I think a lot about the hidden life of Jesus and Mary and Joseph. And I think how interesting it is. What were they doing for all those years? And in God's wisdom, we don't know a lot about those years. So and the little we know is not necessarily like the most charming. We know that they went on a trip and Jesus gets lost. And there's always like not, but you think like it must have been pretty lovely, their domestic life. So it's hidden. And this project is similar. It's like we want to bring into the light, bring out, but what I was going to say is it's clear that people happily at home living this sort of unusual, uncommon, abundant family life, it is hidden to the public eye.
Sure.
And so there's a work to be done. And frequently, the very people quietly welcoming a lot of children, or even just a few children, they don't want to take to the newspaper and kind of crow about themselves. And so there's a work to be done there in terms of just spotting the wisdom, as you're saying, this like things we've lost and trying to bring it out.
Yeah, you know, with many children, right? You get the comments and they can range from really positive, really beautiful. We had an older lady pull us aside after Mass one day. I think we just had those first 5 or the second set of first 5, whatever. And she said, "You will never be lonely." And it took me a couple years to really the truth in that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because in that moment, I have 5 kids ages 6 and under. I would love to be
You're like,
lonely,
please bring me loneliness.
right? Lonely sounded like quiet, nobody touching me. That sounds great. How do I sign up? But to really unpack that and go, yeah, because she herself, and as I got to know her more at church, she was lonely. She had never married and had never had children. And she was in the depths of true lonely. And so to be able to look at that and go, I will never have to carry that cross. Like I can't be thankful enough for that. But then there's the converse of that. Do you know how that happens? Yeah, actually I do. Or just the crazy comments and stuff when people see it. But then the people who are like, you should have your own TV show. And absolutely not. Never. Nope. You will not. Nope. Because I think, and we've all seen the shows of big families. And not that it's not interesting, right? Not that I haven't from time to time watched different ones. Because it is. You're like, is what we're doing in any way similar? Yeah, like we're on very similar paths. Oh, I don't do that quite that way, but we do this other, and that's just human nature, right? Like we all kind of want to know, am I doing life right? Is this what I'm supposed to do? But at the same time, some things are meant to be left not shared on video.
Yeah. Amen. My husband is fond of reminding our children that the original meaning of obscene is just off scene. It's just not to be seen. Now, of course, it means like it's inappropriate or vulgar in some way, but it really just meant like this isn't meant to be seen.
Yeah.
And
The normal stuff. We don't need
Yeah.
to share that.
yeah, exactly. So I want to come back to a thing that I think a lot of listeners might want to ask, and maybe they're sitting there thinking, ask the question. So you talked about your conversion to the Catholic Church. You mentioned at some point that you don't use birth control because of the effects on your body and your health. The church has a particular approach to thinking about what Catholic Church calls openness to life. I have encountered in my research and travels so many different approaches to like planning and not planning and everything in between. But many people want to know about that. And is it possible and good to live in a marriage where your option, if you would need to wait, is abstinence? That's one thing that you mentioned. And I think on the same vein, is it, I guess I'd put it this way, people looking from the outside, do Catholics have to have that many? Could you have stopped before? Is it just, yeah, those are questions people have. I can even think of someone in my extended family who I won't name, who upon learning that most of us didn't use artificial birth control, said, do I have to have 15 kids? Great question, but of course it's not actually a simple answer. So what would you
Correct.
say to that extended family member? Or just, yeah, how do you think about it?
Yeah. So I guess I think about it from the terms that having a baby is not necessarily a guaranteed result of relations with your husband, right? It's not an automatic, we have 9 babies. We've had
Yeah,
sex 9 times.
9 times.
Right? It's not a direct math problem like that.
Yeah.
I will say there have been many times where my husband and I joke, we were given supernatural fertility. We're not 100% sure why. Both of us will ask God,
Yeah.
we loved it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I love it. As hard as my pregnancies were, if I had the chance, and we all know this is hypothetical because we don't get redos on life, but if
Yeah.
I had to choose to change something, I would still absolutely do all of their pregnancies again, even our losses, because their souls are worth it. But yeah, do Catholics have to have a lot of babies? No, I don't think so. There's nothing in the church teaching. The church, what is very clear on is that marital act needs to have those 2 facets. It needs to be love sharing, obviously. I think most people understand that side of it. And have that openness to have the potential to be life-giving, right? That we have not closed off that side of it, which is hard with crazy fertility. Although I will say God is wise and is his wisdom. He seems to have kind of, fixed that on one of our sides at least. It's mine, but with some of the other stuff I've had going on, weird cycles and stuff, became much more a part of my story after we had my last one, or we had our last one. So I think God kind of, that's a grace. He was like, okay, for us, we valued, the goal of this is not just to make as many humans as possible, but to raise them up. Like you said in the introduction, we do homeschool.
Yeah.
And we probably 10, 11 years ago, and this is my 20th year of homeschooling. So not from the beginning of our homeschool journey, but halfway in to where we are now, at least, we finally kind of named our school, right? We officially named it Thomas More Academy. Discovered that Thomas More's coat of arms had chickens, and that was the first time we got chickens. It felt very fitting. But for our school, we were like, what is our purpose? Why are we doing this? What's our mission statement? So then we prayerfully, as a family at that point in time, right? The older ones were anywhere from, I think, 10 to 15, kind of was our older set of 5. Why are we doing this, guys? And so it's not very long, but the the basic foundation of it is we want to raise saints. We want our children to have a relationship with Christ and to get to heaven. And they may not be super great at math. Most of them are, but that was not our purpose for this, right? I don't need you to all be geniuses. I need you to make it to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, like that for us is the underlying big goal for what we do and what we don't do. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, a couple of little things, and we can look towards wrapping up soon. And I'm sure you've got I'm like, what time is it there? I know I have to feed my kids, but let's see. One question I always like to ask is like, why do you think this way of life, like just whether you work outside the home or you don't work outside the home, you just are like, yeah, we'll just do this. We'll have these kids and we'll work around the kids. Like, why is that so rare? Why do you think people aren't having kids as much these days? Like,
I think because our world, because it's not just American culture that is
Yeah.
struggling with this,
that is
certainly.
right.
The kind of the focus for each individual is what are you directly contributing to society, right? How are you directly improving the world or creating something new, giving of yourself? What are you doing to make a change, to make a difference? And that's not how parenting and staying at home with your kids, that's not how that works. I'm contributing to society, but it's indirectly. It's unseen by the world because the impact that I'm making because of the choices that we within our family have made, which again, not everybody is intended to have 10 kiddos or more, and not everybody is intended to be a stay-at-home mom homeschooling them. As I think I said before, it's a special kind of like crazy, but
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's how we are and who we are. For us, like we made the very active, conscious, like it wasn't an accident that I'm at home with kiddos, right? Like we live in a society where, there are all sorts of methods of preventing or even ending pregnancies, right? So it's not this mystery where we've been disconnected from the world and haven't had any one of those options available to us. But we've made the very conscious decision to be open to the children we have, even the surprise adoption, and to intentionally embrace those lives and to have me being at home with them. And like in doing that, it's looking at that bigger goal, right? We want them to become saints. So I'm going to invest in them, everything that I have that I can, with the caveat, obviously, right? Like my primary vocation is as a wife, right? My primary vocation is to Jerry because all of these kids, Lord willing, all of them will grow up and move out. And what will remain is our marriage, right? Like hopefully for many more than these first 25 years.
Yeah.
After that, after my primary vocation, which again, keeping that marriage relationship, that husband and wife relationship growing does take a lot of intentionality with a lot of kids. There's kids everywhere. And it's not even just ours, right?
Yeah.
Since moving to where we are, we've had, I have to think and count. The first young man that moved up here is now actually my daughter's husband. So they were dating before we moved. He moved up here, found a job up here, found an apartment up here. Now, obviously, he is up here full time because they got married and just lived 10 minutes from us. And then we've had, I guess 4 other young men move in and live with us either for a summer or for a year. None of the other ones have dated my daughters, but they were all friends from Austin. There's a lot of job opportunities here because where we live is this interesting tourist destination. So in the summer, there's a lot of very good paying jobs, right? So for these college kids who have the summer and need to make a lot of money, and we have extra beds and bedroom space and been able to open our home to them. So when I say there's kids everywhere, they're not all ours right now. My husband's youngest sister, who is the same age as our son, so they're both 21. She is living with us. She is actually dating one of those young men who came up, and now he's up here full time, got a job with the construction crew as a carpenter. So there's any number of other people in our house, right? So you do have to be intentional on our relationship.
Yeah.
For better or worse, there's sometimes when everybody else is really involved in something and I'm like, hey, we got 10 minutes. We could disappear. And he doesn't usually say no.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's not just like, because by the end of the day, let's be honest, sometimes you're just really tired.
Yeah. That's a
but
huge pearl of wisdom. I'm like gonna shout into the thing. I'm like, that is a huge pearl of wisdom, what you just said, which I want so many people to know. Which is
well, and that I think like that, you know, with my parents divorcing my senior year in high school, what I came to experience as far as what marriage was, it was more of two people simultaneously working to raise children, but there wasn't the love between them. Like what I witnessed wasn't what I wanted. Like I knew that then as a teenager. Gosh, that's a lot of years to invest in. I mean, because it was just shy of their 20th anniversary, right? That's a lot of years to invest in somebody and then it just be gone.
Yeah.
So like, I knew I didn't want that. My husband's parents are still happily married. Our parents, mine and his, actually got married on the exact same day of the same year.
My goodness.
Yeah. So like his, you know, again, they're still happily married. They're still together, right? You know, and mine are not. And my dad actually almost exactly 2 years ago passed away. But like, so I didn't have that model of what marriage was designed to be, but I had in my head an idea of what I wanted it to be. But what I knew was any good relationship, like you got to invest time in it, right? Like my best girlfriends from high school, there was a lot of time invested there. We spent a lot of time together. We talked, we had deep conversations. And so I took that experience and went, okay, I want to have a marriage that's going to last. I want to love this person more than any other person on the planet forever.
Yeah.
I need to be intentional about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does take that intentionality, which unfortunately, again, is not a picture the world is showing us. A picture the world is showing us like, hey man, when it gets hard, like you can just try with somebody else. It's fine. Kids are resilient. And that's a whole other thing because they are, but they aren't. They're not meant to need to be resilient from certain things.
Yeah.
And now having 4, you know, adult children now.
Yeah.
And 2 in-laws, a beautiful daughter-in-law and an awesome son-in-law. If they can be the models for what the rest of them are, it's going to be great. But to be able to interact with them and to have had different ones come at different times and not necessarily prompted by any bold gesture or large statement, but just because all in all, like they live a pretty quiet life. I know the assumption is with this many kids, it has to be loud and crazy all the time. There really isn't.
Yeah.
I only have the one boy, so I didn't have little boys like messing with each other, wrestling around the house. I have girls like they like to read, they do handcrafts, like we love arts and craft time. And I've not heard a peep out of anybody this whole time, and I'm certain they're still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think being intentional about prioritizing that relationship.
Yeah.
And from there, again, you know, children, adult children, in-laws.
Yeah.
Different ones have come to me and like just in their own way expressed their appreciation to see us quietly but fervently like pursuing each other still. And doing so while also individually and together pursuing God, because I don't want to go to heaven without him either.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
needs to get there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is really profound what you're saying. I hope that when the reckoning is done, we will look at the kind of that boomer generation or whatever that generation is that your parents and mine both inhabited. So we must be similarly aged, you and I. That our generation will be known for sort of doing better, because I think there were a lot of myths. The myth of the good divorce, that's something I teach in my classes. This idea, like, just like you can wait till the youngest one is in college and that's like the right time to do it. And you're kind of like, I look at my kids who are 18 or 19 and I think, oh my, like, I'm speechless. Like, it takes my breath away to think what it would do to them if we were ever to split up. I think, by what stretch of the imagination did people ever think, like, at 18 they can handle this, but they can't when they're 12? There's so many pieces of this, and I think so much wisdom in what you just conveyed. And the reason I'm like celebrating your comments, which are so great, is because I think a piece of what's happened with young people not getting married, a piece, I don't think it's the whole story, is a kind of people are a bit jaded, or they don't really know that you can have that. And it's fine. You have to say to them, listen, there's like a recipe, there's work. You have to be good at this skill that you probably don't have. And if your parents split up, you really don't have it. But like, you can still have a romantic, warm, loving, and really enriching relationship. And again, emphasis on it can still be romantic after how many years? 25 years of marriage, lots and lots of kids. So there's a piece here to be told about. It's kind of good news. Actually, you can have faith in this. It's possible. Yeah. So it's lovely. I'm so happy for you. Love to meet Jerry someday. It sounds, I was going to say there's another podcast, which we will not do now, which is just like, how does Jerry live with only one son? And this like blessed among women.
He's a really great girl dad.
That's great.
And I don't love the term, like boy mom or, but
sure.
He really, with each daughter, really grew into being, and there's a song that several of our daughters like, that basically what the song is expressing is this young lady who's singing it. She wants to find a mate, who will love her the way her dad loves her mom. Mm. And our girls like that, because they said, you have what we want, Mom. Like, we want a man who will love us the way dad loves you. Yeah. And these are the older girls who have had boyfriends who just didn't turn out to be the one. Yeah. And our oldest, who is married, right? She's like, I found the guy who loves me the way I've seen dad love you. And they get each other's jokes. And I think there is a piece of dads need to tell dad jokes. Don't take yourself too seriously. Right? There needs to be time for fun. There's time for being serious, but it can't all be that stressful and hard. Find times for the fun, find times to be silly. My girls asked my husband this morning, because they were discussing their Valentine's Day plans, and my 16-year-old's boyfriend is flying up from Texas to be up here for Valentine's Day, which is crazy. Like, all of my older kids pitched in to help pay for his plane ticket to bring him up for the weekend. It's really cute. I think it's really cute. And we love him and we love his family. He is actually the second youngest in another homeschooling family of 10. Lots of potential there, let's say, but no. They're still very young. They're just 16. Well,
and they are just 16. This is a good problem to have, right? Like, you're older. I just can't read enough news about how young people aren't dating. And so here you have young people who are dating, who are really fond of each other. And hopefully it works out. But if it doesn't, this is
they're
training
learning
ground.
more about themselves, right? And that's what we've always instilled in our kiddos is, yes, ultimately the goal behind dating is to find someone that you could spend your life with, right? That you care enough about and that cares enough about you, that you could find that possibility of then making that promise to be together forever, because that's what marriage is, right? It's for as long as we both shall love, as long as we both shall live. It's forever. It is a covenant, right? Like, it's not breakable. So, like, we've worked to instill that in our kiddos. But also somebody you can have fun with, right? Somebody that you can joke around with, somebody that you're going to want to keep getting to know, because you'll never fully know another human being. There's always going to be something you'll be like, I didn't know about you, not about you. But yeah, so this morning, my daughters asked my husband if he'd asked me to be his Valentine yet.
Oh,
And I looked at him like, with the, okay, I'm waiting. And he goes, I don't need to. He goes, it's just assumed now. And then he giggled. You gotta have some amount of sense of humor, right? He's like, of course, like, I'll ask her. And I think that's a piece of it for us is, yes, we're married, but I think it was the priest who did our premarital course with us who said, never stop dating. And at first I was like, excuse me? Because he's done dating already. He goes, no, not other people. You. Never stop dating each other. Never decide like that we're married and I don't have to try anymore. Continue pursuing each other. And that can be a lot of fun.
yeah. It's the dream. It's what people are after. And it's not coming together for so many people, but it's so wonderful and so important. Now, before we wrap up, you live in Door County. I don't know when I'll get up there, but I want to knock on your door if I ever do.
Please do.
It must be so beautiful. My husband
It's
will try
pretty
to
incredible.
get into my suitcase if I do come to visit because he is a golfer. And
Okay, yeah, there's lots
so
of that up
beautiful
here.
golf. But here's my question. Where do you hike? Or this is
Okay.
like flat hiking, or are there hills? But
There
yeah.
are hills up here. So we have some really majestic bluffs. And we're not talking like Rocky Mountain height type bluffs, but there are bluffs along the water, along many points of both the Bayside and Lake Michigan side. We have at least 18 inches of ice over a large portion of the bay right now. There's some little islands in the Sister Bay. They're called the Sister Islands. From the closest point of land that public can access that isn't like somebody's house right on the bluff or something. It's just over a mile hike out to the first island.
Okay.
And my husband and I, 2 weekends ago, maybe that Saturday morning was actually the anniversary of my dad's passing. And I just knew I wanted to do something quiet to have some reflection time. I was like, let's hike to the Sister Islands. So, he and I got nice and bundled up because I think the actual temperature was like 3. The feels like was much colder than that. And we took a few hours and hiked out to the Sister Islands, and because we had never been to them before. We have canoes and a couple of sailboats, but we had not actually been out to the islands because usually you need a bigger boat to get out there. So we went out and checked out the islands. So we hiked on the ice a lot in the winter.
That's
once that
amazing.
gets warmed up, and it has to be very thick for me to finally give like the, okay, now we can. So usually the first hike or two out, my husband will bring a hatchet. He can cut through it and prove to me that it is sufficiently thick. And when it's smooth ice, we'll go out and take the kids ice skating out on the bay and stuff. So yeah, there's
That's
all sorts of
incredible.
amazing stuff. Yeah.
It never occurred to me that you could just hike on the ice, but as soon as you say it, I think, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And in the history of Door County, they have brought homes over from the UP and Peninsula
on the
over
ice.
the Bay of Green Bay to the Door County Peninsula. So
Amazing.
we're not hauling a house out there. We should
No,
be
that's amazing. We hike a lot in the New Hampshire mountains, and it's
Okay.
true that there are many trails that are easier to hike in the winter, just in terms of the footing of the trail, because the ice and the snowfall fills in the ruts between these giant rocks and roots. If you're properly geared and you have spikes and things like that, you can often make much better time. So there are these
Oh, that's
interesting things
awesome.
about winter. I'm not a big fan of the cold, but that is great. Abigail, I am so thankful for you joining me. And this, again, we're just this nascent podcast, but we think there's a work to be done here. And
I think it's amazing what you're doing.
your
It's really
story
amazing.
is super moving and beautiful. And you've really, opened your heart in a lot of ways. So thank you for that. And I hope
Yeah.
I'll meet you in Door County at some point.